Hi guys, this week we had a chance to talk to the author and researcher Merlin Sheldrake about fungi and mushrooms and all the amazing things that are going on in that world. So enjoy.
You're listening to the Forest School Podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
Today, we're talking about... Pay attention! Class!
How's your week been? Your week in
Fucking
nature?
Shit. No, it's fine. No. Eventful.
Your week in nature?
Eventful. It's been an eventful week.
Yeah?
Had to first aid my own kid.
Yeah?
But you know, these things happen. It was,
Yeah.
and everything's fine now, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened at a session.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want an example of not money where your mouth is, children where your mouth is.
No, that sounds
No.
really dodgy.
Okay. That's what I meant. Living what we say.
Practice what you preach.
Yeah.
What? Where was that going?
Well, just that, it was not like we experiment and say these things and go, yeah, other people's children, but not our own. Very much our own.
Yeah.
And sometimes we kind of go, do you think they need other stuff? No, we're fine. We're fine. We're enough.
Yeah.
We're enough. We ran our first level 3. We haven't,
Yes,
since the last podcast, we ran our level 3 course and it was amazing.
Yes.
It did feel slightly like anybody that's like, oh, guys, I just wish I could listen to more of the podcast. Come do a level 3 because we do not shut up for 5 days.
5 whole days.
Absolute work. And very helpfully, I think it was so we started at like 8:30, didn't we, roughly?
Yeah.
And I think before 10 o'clock on the first day, I'd established that they were all right with me swearing.
Yeah.
And that made the week so much easier.
Yeah.
Because that would have been a really hard week for me. They were all staring at me in front of a table full of saws and axes and knives.
Yeah.
And I just was like, does anyone mind swearing? And they were like, no, go for it. Because as we established, teachers swear more when they're not around kids because they have to bottle it up and then it all comes out in these concentrated things. And then your friends are like, you're very sweary. And you're like, if you averaged it through the day, I'm probably an average amount of swearing. But it has to get condensed into, especially if you've got kids at home as well, condense it into these tiny little moments.
Yeah. My kids have started swearing now. But they only know bloody hell, which they always pronounce in the same way. Oh, bloody hell! Bloody hell! It's got about 3 Ds and no H on the beginning of hell. I don't know why. They must have heard me or somebody else do it. Oh, bloody hell! But like they're doing a poo at the same time with that kind of tone of voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they both started doing it like this week. I think I did talk to my oldest one about how swearing releases pain-reducing endorphins and stuff in your brain, and that's like why we instinctively do it. So now he started doing it on purpose when he hurts himself,
to try and as a coping mechanism. I love it.
So I'm really glad I told him that.
I love it.
Excellent.
Let's get that in an EHCP.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. My son swears, and it's important to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so today we've just written, because we're incredibly well prepared, at the gate about 20 minutes ago, you said, shall we podcast about this? And I said, sure. And then we've sat down and we've written.
And I hope that we haven't done this before. But we might have done, because we've done so many of these bloody things now that maybe we've just forgotten. It was like...
People don't care.
People don't care.
People don't care. We'll just tell you the same thing over again.
Yeah.
So, Forest School, guys, it happens in a woodland, right? And you go there with some learners, and you... Principle 1.
Swearing.
No. We're going to talk about wide games.
Yes.
And so the first thing that not the first thing.
Tell the listeners what a wide game is.
I would define a wide game
because we were talking about this just now.
Something that you might do that would be equally valid for a scout group in a hall, a teacher on a playground.
Ooh, really?
Not that you would do all the games in all those settings, but wide games can be used by scout leaders, teachers on a playground, any kind of outdoor activity centre. If they've got a big flat field and they've ever gone, let's go play a game, what they're playing is a wide game.
So yeah, wide open, well, not necessarily open, but big space, lots of room, quite physical and active, maybe some element of like teams or competitiveness or a challenge that's
And
gonna
normally
be
quite
completed.
quite a simple objective.
Yeah.
So, but the methods of achieving it are, so on paper it's like get X to Y,
Yeah.
or get as many this as you can without something. It can be explained in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
But then the complexity of it is done by the team of going, here's a strategy
Or the
for
individual.
it. Or the individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I think we're going to talk broadly about some wide games we play, and also what we have reflected on them and why we do and don't do certain things.
Yeah.
But one of my initial thoughts was that we are very lucky to be able to do wide games in a woodland to the scale that we do, because we have a completely private woodland.
Yeah.
And I was talking to some people about this and saying that if I was running this on a public site where there might be dog walkers or there might be, it would change my perception. So we have 3 acres, give or take, and we use all 3 acres in some of these wide games. It is, what do you reckon, end to end? 300 metres, 400 metres? 300.
What? From
the south side
north?
to north, that's probably 300 metres. Maybe
I'd say more.
2 in it. It's not a 400 metre running track. That a 400 metre running track is knackering. Anyway, this is besides the point. But if we were doing this in a woodland where I thought there might be members of the public walking past or doing whatever, if you can hear clanking,
I'm making
right,
just- I'm just making
Gemma has
coffee.
walked off midway through.
But I'm just next to you, so it's fine.
This is like ASMR, but coffee. Also, Gemma arrived today and said, I'm really buzzy because I had a great breakfast and I've had a coffee.
And I did some cardiovascular exercise.
And you did some cardiovascular
that was the
exercise.
important part.
And
But
are you
then
going for coffee number 2?
Yeah, because like I said, I'm going to crash halfway through, and that is happening. I can feel it. Like this is the addict talking, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had a
You get
really,
jittery.
really lucid dream that I was doing mushrooms last night for the first time ever. Yeah, it was very real. And then I woke up. I wish I hadn't woken up. I was quite excited to see where it was going. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah, so you have to excuse the noise of banging and clattering and
listen.
caffeinating.
There. Done.
That was Gemma pouring it down her throat. That was her just opening up and pouring down. Yeah, I would do wide games on a very different scale if we were in a public woodland, because part of it is, so like we kind of touched on, if you're doing this in a field, your visibility is really good,
Yeah.
which affects the game for the children or the learners, but also affects your like RBA for you as a leader.
Yeah.
Whereas in this woods, once you go 100 metres,
You're invisible, basically.
you are invisible. We've
Yeah.
got a hill, which gives us an advantage because we can see down the hill. And if we get up high, up here, you can see a lot of the woodland. But we've got so much holly and kind of shrub layer and stuff like that but that works really well for wide games because it gives you lots of sneaky paths and you can be invisible.
Yeah.
But if there were, it just changes how much you've got to trust the kids.
Yep.
Or
And
trust
how
the people
comfortable
playing.
they feel as well, because, like some kids, like on Holiday Club, for example, would arrive here and be like, and you'd go, okay, we're going to play this game, which involves you going out of sight and hiding and being either by yourself or with a group of people you've never met before,
Yeah.
and playing this like high stakes game. And some kids are absolutely fine with that, but other kids obviously would be like, what? You're asking me to do what?
Yeah.
So it's also about the group as well as the space, isn't it? And having kids that we've known for a very long time, who've known each other for a long time and know the space, pretty well.
and their physical ability. So 100 metres on a flat field for a 3-year-old, I wouldn't say is particularly far. 100 metres in a woodland for a 3-year-old with in a site with a hill is, they're going to feel a lot less. I don't want to say safe, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can't get back to a place of safety as easily, and
Yeah.
that will affect how they want to play the game or how we set up the game.
Yeah.
Um,
Trying to play games, so I was like doing sessions here in the forest and then going into a school and doing it on a school field. really trying to like scrabble around in my brain for going, okay, right, I know this group would really benefit from some of the wide games we do in the woods. I've got a school field. It's got like a bush, like one bush to hide behind.
The bush.
It's
always called the bush.
Or the tree. And go, oh God, it's really hard to cobble together games that work for that like flat kind of dead
Without
space.
bringing in lots of resources. You could obviously bring in like ropes and tabards and cones, and it
Then
becomes
feels
a
like
PE lesson.
And then
Yeah.
we've talked about this as well, haven't we? As with football, like football at Forest School. What's the deal with that? Like, it seems to be an issue that comes up for quite a few practitioners. I think because a lot of people do end up working on school fields, and so the kids have that association with like, well, I play football here, and the footballs I know are kept in that box over there, and you're kind of telling me that I can do free play and I can like guide my own activities. So can I get the footballs out? What's your answer to that? I mean, I said no, and I think we talked about this, didn't we?
I was talking to somebody about this who was saying, but they were in a woods and their kids wanted to bring football. That was all they wanted to say. And I said that I've kind of come down in the same place as I do with technology, in that like I'm okay with resources if they deepen your connection to the space or nature. So for technology, digital camera, great. Social media, not great. So it's disconnecting you. Something that lets you, using your phone to look up mushrooms, great. Using your iPod or a generic music device to listen to music and block out the sounds that are going on around you is disconnecting you from space. And so football and wide games, I would do the same thing of going, is this game, so like a sneaking game, is it helping them to subconsciously even think about where are their spaces, where are their tunnels, where's my visibility good and poor? Or football is just, everything here is an obstacle to me playing the game. If you're on a field and you're playing football, you're not necessarily thinking about the grass, you're not necessarily thinking about the hedging on the outside, you might be thinking about the bush. But do you know what I mean? That's where I came down on it.
Yeah, it's also a thing where if you've got like 3 people playing football on your Forest School field, school field being used as a Forest School site, then how does that impact the other learners who doesn't,
so much
space.
Space.
You've got a whirling massive object and shouting and all the rest of it in a quite exclusive way. It's not like this is a made up game that people can go, rock up and go, can I join in? It's a very
Well, it goes back to all
thing,
kind of
isn't it?
field games in some sense come from an elitist position of being able to maintain a lawn. One, you need somebody to be able to, historically, you need regular maintenance, and before electric tools, that's hand cutting the grass. You also are saying that this is not valuable to me, or I don't need it to grow food. Or habitat, or coppice, or, so by any kind of pitch field games are to an extent from that aristocracy who can, and also take time off work. Cricket is a 6-day game that requires an absolute like acre of land that needs to regularly be maintained and can be played. Do you know what I mean? You look at it and you go, right, who's going to play that game historically? Someone that can go, yes, I shall not work for 6 days, and I shall clap, and to do all that. Anyway, getting off topic, we were talking about resources and building them into wide games and how you do it on a flat site. And I think
Find out about CPD courses at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
one of the big things, I ended up writing it down twice. I wrote down cheating, trust and fairness.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think are massive components.
I mean, you could
of
do a
wide
whole
games.
podcast just about that, couldn't you, really? Because that is a massive part of... We were talking about democratic education earlier, and we really want to do a podcast all about it and do a deep dive on it. But just to kind of touch on it briefly, even without wide games, you've got a bunch of learners in a space, meeting regularly, with all the Forest School principles applied. You basically have set up a kind of, up for debate, but I would say if you're doing it a certain way, you're setting up a democratic experience.
Yeah, let's establish that.
And so those issues are going to come up whether you're playing wide games or not, and that's a really, it's massive, isn't it? Because in a school, a mainstream traditional school, each participant in a classroom has got so little opportunity to talk about or make a stand for fairness, equality, all of that kind of stuff. And you know, there's like school councils and things, aren't there, where they get to kind of discuss those things. But at Forest School, then we were saying earlier, it's like minute to minute that is an issue. You know, oh, but hang on. It's everywhere, because you don't have that top-down approach of being a teacher and going, okay, right, Group A, you're going to come and do drilling with me, and we're going to do that for 15 minutes, and then we're going to switch to Group B so that everyone gets a turn, or if you've got the drill, you can use it for 5 minutes, or you can use it until you've drilled the hole, and then it's somebody else's turn. Like, because there is none of that, then it's up to the group to make those decisions and confront those difficulties.
To an extent.
Go on.
To an extent. Well, I think this is where, you know, you get into that thing of like, because what I was just going to say is like, oh, it's like you're not giving them a system, you're not giving a framework, you're letting a framework develop.
Yep.
But there are some things at Forest School where you go, the risk here means I have to put a framework in of putting a rope up round my tool area. We don't go democratic, you know, it's that line between what people would just find as like anarchy.
Yeah.
And it's almost like if you were a tribe and somebody new arrived, you wouldn't abandon it all and go, right, well, I guess we can go and stroke the tigers again. Let's read it. You know, you go, this is our culture, and our culture is that this is what keeps us safe. You know, the established members of the community pass that information on and hopefully explain why.
Yeah.
Gives you some either explain why or get a low-level chance to do some risk-taking, some social experimenting, and go, this is where I was thinking about wide games, because some wide games are set up to be, and I think this is an almost teachery approach, and I know it's a thing I did when I was teaching, and sometimes some groups of learners need this, but you try and set them up to be cheat-proof. Mm-hmm. You know, whenever you and I develop a wide game together, quite often we'll ping back and forth before they do it, where we go, but what if, not naming someone, we go, what if someone does that and they don't get told to do this? Or what if they...
the emotional impact of potential behaviour during the game.
Yes, so you could set up a game and you could try and make it really cheat-proof by going, right, we're all going to have, so like we play Hunts and Rabbits, everybody has these little tags, essentially tag rugby, you run, tag gets pulled out, that's the sign then that says you have been caught, then you join the other team.
You put it on your head.
You put it on your head. Now, in some ways, you could play that game and go, if you get tagged, if you get touched, you go, oh, I got caught, or do whatever. That relies on, and this is a thing that is different, you know, people talk about the impact that technology has on childhood. The way that children interact on technology has set rules to it. Now, that might be, the rules of the game are, it only lets you have a turn, then it lets me have a turn. Or it might be there are physics rules in Minecraft, or there are financial limits to what we can do. But the limits are there for them. And the framework punishes or just completely doesn't allow cheating, in quotes. But things like board games and physical wide games, they rely on everybody coming together and going, we're all agreeing that this will only be fun. In the same way that a board game, you could roll a 6 and go, no, I'm going to move 8. The board doesn't catch fire. Right? It doesn't go, you have...
But it's about your peers, isn't it? Your peers' reaction. And that is, I think that's Bob Hughes' definition of social play, isn't it? It's playing anything where there are rules, whether those are rules that, you know, the rules that the group agree to adhere to. But I think that's, because I've written that down in part of my notes, in terms of those are really amazing learning opportunities. So this ties into what I wanted to talk about the other day as well, because we developed a wide game. I'm going to try and remember all these different strands of thought that are in my head, and it's really tricky. Okay, so we had a game that we invented called South to North, where just one team has to try and get everybody from the south fence of the woods to the north without being caught. Bulldog. And they can run, they can hide, they can sneak, they can do whatever. And then some of our children were really interested in smuggling, as in like ye olde times smuggling,
Cornish
pirates,
smugglers,
etc., etc. So I was like, okay, how can I like weave this into a game. And so then we adapted South to North to include smuggling rocks. So we had some like painted pebbles that the smuggling team had to get from one border to the other. So it was absolutely hilarious. Like, I absolutely loved it. The whole setup to it involved like some of the older children talking about the EU, talking about like borders, and also talking about illicit substances.
Literally, I was with the group that were waiting. So the idea is you can go back and forth as many times as you want, and the people catching are then like border patrol. If they tag you, they go, "Have you got any stones?" So you could run as a decoy or whatever. But I was there, and this is another thing. We were there with a group of mixed-age children. Some of them are 5, right? And some of them are, I think the oldest is 11, 12?
Yeah.
And one of the 12-year-olds just turned around to everybody and went, "Guys, this is EU, and that side is Britain." And then he picked up a rock and he went, "I'm going to get this heroin right through." And he pocketed it and left. And none of the little ones kind of registered what was going on. But I was like, holy moly, what what did your day involve? It involved
I know.
Smuggling Class A's.
We had to send a message to all the parents, didn't we, to go, just in case your child comes home talking about this is what happened. It's all perfectly innocent. But it was so like topical and involving, what was going on in the real world and what's top of mind and the news.
None of them
stuff.
that we're aware of are heroin smugglers in their real life. That's not a thing we can claim.
Yeah. But all going great. I was like high. I was like, this game is amazing. This is so cool. And then it started, and then like the cracks began to appear because people were going, oh, but hang on. No, and basically I think the issue was that some players of the game were so into it, which is what you kind of want, right? You want a game.
They were so into flow.
Yeah.
And that role of it.
Yeah, but all in a different way. So like one of them was smuggling heroin from the EU into Britain. Another one of them just wanted so badly to get all the stones across without getting caught. Was so into it that then all kind of like social niceties, the kind of rules that we live by every day, went out of the window. So suddenly winning the game became so important that it was now okay to like scream in someone's face, to like
dump tackle
somebody, to go, right, you guys can't play because you're not fast enough. You actually aren't playing now because I need to win.
Yeah.
And all of like millions of little fires in inverted commas started like erupting within the group. And then people were upset, and so some people were trying to enforce the social rules and going, okay, yeah, we want to win the game, but you can't like scream at somebody smaller than you. And other people were like, yes, you can, because And so then this was one of the times, as you're saying, where it's as an adult who has some degree of regulation ability, you can go in and help and go, okay, right, let's all stop. People
it's like
are
we
upset.
weren't in the flow, we weren't in the thick of it. You were kind of above it, looking down,
which
and going,
you would hope is the case most of the time. I would say sometimes.
Sometimes me might get a bit into games, but I got all the heroin across. And no, I didn't.
But so, what I wanted to say was that at the time I was like, oh god, having been the person who came up with the original idea and then coming to you and then we developed it together,
felt a bit of ownership.
I felt kind of ownership, and I was like, oh, what a twat. Like, how did I think this was ever gonna flipping work? Do I know this group or not? Like, what the heck? Of course this was gonna happen. Of course so and so was gonna react in that way. Of course this was gonna happen. I'm a twat, blah, failure. And then, so that was going on in the back of my mind, in my little internal voice, whilst I was talking to the children who were dysregulated. And we kind of put it together and we talked about it. And some children were able to express, I don't want to play this game anymore because it's making me feel angry because blah, 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 blah. And some of the children that were able to verbalise that, I was like, actually, turning off my internal monologue of like, you're a twat, how did you make this happen? And standing back and going...
I'm talking about yourself there, not talking about the...
Yeah, talking about me being a twat. And then standing back and observing what was happening now, i.e. the game's fallen apart, what's happening now? I was like, actually...
The social fallout and repair.
Bloody hell. Loads of stuff is happening. That is so positive. And so I wanted to talk about like failure, where you might think you failed, but actually it's a really positive thing.
Well, that's part of it, isn't it? That's where I'm saying, that's kind of where I think my thoughts are in terms of like, do you make something cheat proof? Do you sit down? And then that also eats into your like game talk explanation, because you've got to, if it's one word of like, right, you team, you've got the rocks over there, You got to get them there. If we tag you, you give them up. Let's go. Blah, do the Kermit the Frog arms. Blah.
Yeah.
But if you've then got to add on, and just so you know, if this and there's
But
another
you
rule
could
that's this.
do that as a group beforehand. You could
yeah.
go, but you could. So you as a facilitator could try to foresee any potential issues, which we do that, right?
yeah,
we
yeah.
do like, just.
And week
just
to week
thinking
we
about
adapt it. We
This
kind of
might
go,
happen.
yeah.
So what do you guys think we should do if that does happen, and kind of get a bit of a group agreement? Because we also talk about sometimes we'll have an idea. One of us will have an idea for a wide game, and the other one will go, don't know how the group's going to deal with that. And then we talk about, but is that a reason not to do it? Like it's almost like it's a sliding scale of like knowing your group and having this game and going, that is so challenging for them. It's going to fail, and people are going to get upset, 100%. So we won't play that game, but. Things that are just, if you're always sticking to the safety of like, that game doesn't make anyone upset, so we'll always just do that game. And I feel like the Smugglers game was kind of in the middle and up towards the challenging end. Like, I'm still glad we did it, and I'm glad that they all had that experience. You see what I mean? Because next time, it might, and it's kind of like social failure, group failure in a really safe environment, because it's a high adult to child ratio. There's no kind of like, we've got to stop talking about it now and move on to another thing because that's what the timetable says we have to do.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody is left with you would hope, there's less chance of someone being left with a kind of festering, unpleasant feeling because there's time and space to explore that and repair those relationships through the day and all those kind of things. So I still think it's good.
I do think, there's something about, have you ever done an escape room?
Applications for Forest School training are now open at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
So, that is the adult version, I think, of a high-stakes game. And it is, if you want to I would say this, if you want to get to know someone and really get to know someone...
Or yourself.
Do an escape room. For people that don't know what escape rooms are, it's puzzle solving. It's like you get locked in a room, and it might be like a detective's office or a space station lab, and the game is like, can you solve all the puzzles, find the key at the end, and escape the room in the time. That is the equivalent of Smugglers, but for adults. That high stakes, and you really reflect on social currency. So I have only done one. I would love to do more, but I realised that I had no social currency because I knew two people, and then there were two. It was one group of friends, and we were on one branch of their friendship tree, and some other people were on the other. So there's one couple in the middle who know both people. But I don't know the couple on the other side. I'm quite competitive. And quite sweary. And I know what I look like. Right? So the image of me going like, fucking open the drawer! Why didn't you say you opened the drawer? Jesus Christ! Like ripping paper out their hands and all this stuff. And it made me reflect on myself and go, okay, I've got to do that. So similarly, not just the people who got dysregulated doing Smugglers, but the rest of the group had a chance to go, okay, that person reacts like that to stress. Maybe next time there's something stressful coming up, I'll know what's gonna, what's coming. Maybe I can need to step in and help. Maybe I can run. You don't learn anything if you only ever see people in comfortable situations.
Of course. Well, that goes back to risky play, doesn't it? That is risky play. We talked about how risky play is, risk isn't just physical risk, it's emotional and social risk. And it is, you're facilitating that. So I guess that's when you're deciding whether or not a game is going to work or not, and by work I mean have some kind of positive outcome even if it all falls apart, is it risky but not completely out of their...
Possibly looking at it, those story arc graphs that go, the character has a thing. You might think that your wide game is the whole story. You might go, it was challenging, that's the dip, and then they came up because someone won. That might actually be just the first little bump, because then you might have a very deep dip where there's the social fallout, repairing, whatever else, and then the actual finish of the story is the big bit at the end that you come straight back up and you go, and we socially repaired and we learned about. But if you only think that the game is the arc, and you look at it and go, well, if the game ends with people being unhappy, that's not great. And you're like, well, that might be the dip. You need to think about the longer time frame.
I like your point about learning about each other in the group and going, oh, right, okay, that's how they react in a stressful situation. Similarly, that might give, even if it all falls apart, maybe perhaps somebody who doesn't normally have a kind of outspoken, leadery type personality in the group generally.
That power and identity.
Something about the parameters of the game, the constraints of the game, the objective means that they take on show a different side to themselves, have a different voice, and engage with the rest of the group in a different way. The rest of the group, oh, okay, I didn't know you sort of had that.
And particularly, I think a lot of wide games. So I'm thinking things like Hunters and Rabbits, Smugglers, Bulldog, even to an extent, Hide and Seek. They work on the same principle that rugby does, where everybody has a role, but they're different skills. You look at a rugby team, you've got big people that don't do a lot of moving, and you've got, it almost goes down and down and down and down. You've got fast little whippy people on the end, and everybody's got a role. In terms of a game like Smugglers, you might go, well, I'm big, I can be the distraction, or these guys that you might have gone, if you played it over and over again, people might develop roles of like, okay, well, you be the sneaks, and we'll be the chargers, and you be the something else. And having different strategies gives people more power than just, because a lot of games that people will play, if you are bigger and faster, you win the game.
Yeah.
Like a foot race, bigger, faster wins the race.
Yeah.
But something that involves a bit of strategy, a bit of sneaking, you might go, gosh, she's not fast, but you cannot see her. She knows how to hide.
Or she is a great actor. She said she didn't have any stones, and actually she had 7.
Yeah.
All those kind of things. Yeah, and I love that. And I love that. So I think we've recently, with one group anyway, kind of arrived at games work best if it's the group versus you and I.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because then they get a bit of time to kind of discuss and do strategy whilst we're away from them, and I think that's really great, because
really
then
valuable.
they kind of talk about it and decide all that kind of stuff. I wanted to say something.
Well, I was going to say that one of the things is that wide games here are adaptable in a way that I think the mentality when I've done wide games in school and in sports club, holiday clubs, possibly this is to do with the culture of those settings.
Yep, I think I know
but
what
the
you're
rules of the game are the rules of the game.
And they are the most important thing. They're more important than if somebody is very, very upset, for example.
Or even just that so like a holiday club, you have different kids week to week, session to session. The rules of football do not care if you are new to football or have been playing 20 years, or do you know what I mean? The rules are the same. But what I like about doing wide games here is that we as a group can sometimes go, you might have some kids that have been coming for 2 years, and they have taken Hunters and Rabbits, and like we had one child who invented extra roles of, you're the lumberjack, so now you can do this and this and this, and you're they can extend it themselves, but it also gives you the flexibility to go, well, why don't we do it pairs today? Why don't we do it so you're only on this half? But I think the mentality in more structured places is that's not how the game is played.
Exactly, yeah.
But Forest School has this kind of like flexible, why don't we change it? Oh, okay, I'm not tied to it.
And that's kind of part of our training and development, right, as facilitators, that we are ultimately flexible. It's like you are in the moment all the blooming time, and you're flexible, which is not a skill that is often practiced if you are like a holiday club leader.
And this is one of the things that one of our level 3 students was saying, they put a question in a Facebook group and they got shouted down. Everybody just said, you haven't done your training. And you and I kind of went, well, you might understand that a little bit more at the end of the week. When I see people go, I need a game for 3-year-olds, or my group are doing Romans, blah, blah, blah. Part of what I guess it relates to this, which is that if you're not practiced and adept at adapting, say that really fast.
Adept at adapting.
Then, and you get given a lesson plan, you might think that is the only way to play the game. Whereas someone who's practiced forest school and is very reflective will go, okay, this might be the idea, but my group need it in a different way.
I kind of feel like you need to have firsthand the experience of
It going wrong.
I think you need to do it like 5 or 6 times, different like categories of game, so that you can get different different learners' reactions to those things, so that then you can make predictions about next time, and also areas of flexibility, and also how helpful it. Like, can you imagine if we were doing this by ourselves? You know, like one of us will come up with an idea for a wide game, tell it to the other person will ping it back and go, have you considered X, Y, Z? Oh yeah, and together we do it. If we were by ourselves, it would be so much more challenging to do that, wouldn't it?
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
So everybody, link up with some other forest school practitioner. That's the thing.
Community, not competition.
Community, not competition.
Yeah.
Chat about it. I wanted to talk about like a different type of learning that isn't necessarily like social learning that is happening in a wide game, which is kind of like recapitulative play. So in Hunters and Rabbits, for example, I was playing it with a group of 11-year-olds once. And they were the kind of group who were quite kind of
here or
not here in a
else?
school, but it doesn't really matter where it was, because it was more about like the chat we had afterwards.
Okay.
So they wanted to talk about the experience of having played it for the first time, and so we were going, okay, so what what did that feel like, and what do you reckon we were learning while we were doing that? And so they talked quite a lot about like predator and prey. So I don't know if they had been learning about that in school as well, or in science or something. But it giving you both the experience of being a prey animal, and the kind of, and I was wondering whether it kind of sparks a type of empathy for prey animals through playing that, So if for example, we will say here, like, stay on the paths where you can see paths, because there are lots of small animals, mice, etc., that are living in those habitats, or talking about invertebrates and putting them back where you found them and things like that, and for some learners that is like, well, if you say so, but I'm not going to be able to empathise with like a woodlouse because
a worm, mate.
Because it's exactly. But maybe through having that experience of being prey, that is a kind of nature connection and kind of harking back to like a really ancient, sense in us as animals. And similarly, if you're a hunter and you're looking at the kind of predatory strategies that you're using. So this group really talked about like, we all there were 3 of us at one point trying to get one rabbit, and so we decided that we would close in on them from all sides, or I decided that I was going to...
That's got to be so hardwired in us.
Yeah. But getting in touch with that like ancient animalistic thing, I thought was really interesting.
I should pick John Cree's brain about this. Like pursuit hunters. Have you ever seen any like footage of pursuit hunters? So they will injure in some way an animal or separate an animal from the herd, and it does what it is, pursuit hunting. It is running and running, which is why humans are supposed to be, in quotes, great joggers, because we're supposed to just jog, and that's why we sweat and we just outlast things. We're very efficient. But a lot of the footage that I've seen, they get to a point where they can't see the animal or its tracks anymore. And what they do is those hunters then they sort of move back a little bit. They move forwards as if they are the animal and go,
where would I go?
I would be going that way. I would be looking. You can't see, but I'm moving around. And they start to go, they just flip into the prey's point of view and go, that looks like the way I would find safety. So let's go. And then they always find it, because that's their life and skill. But it's that thing of like, and also as you were saying that, I was thinking it's a great way to, by changing the criteria you're looking for, it changes how you view a landscape, an environment. If you suddenly, the same way that Go Find It works, if you're looking for green things, you just go, ooh, okay, I can retune into this. If you're looking for round things, in the same way, predator, prey, looking for cover, it all changes how we look at the environment in a way that is hard to do without play.
Definitely.
So if it wasn't play-based, you would really struggle, I think.
It's first hand if it's play-based, isn't it? It's all very well going to a group of learners, okay, so let's look at this habitat and
Where is the middle story?
Yeah, or where is the good habitat for wrens, you know? It's like, oh God, how do we engage with that? But
if you said, where would you hide this rock?
Yeah. Or where are you going to hide, but you're going to hide in a place which is still going to be easy to run from. You know, those kind of decisions that you're making, which are very animalistic, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily verbalise them even afterwards, which is why this group that I was talking about were interesting, because they could and they wanted to. They really wanted to talk about, like, oh, it felt like, you know, they were talking about, I chose a rabbit, they were really fast, I just decided to chase them and chase them and chase them and chase them, and I didn't use any other strategies. I just waited till they got tired, and then they got really tired.
Yeah.
And that was funny because that person in that group is always the fastest. They always win sports day because they're really, really fast.
Right.
But I just kept chasing them, and then they got tired. So even though they're like supersonic runner, actually they didn't necessarily win.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think, to sort of going back to the idea that it's recapitulative, one of the things that I wrote down was that I used the phrase template layering, which is not a good example of what I think.
What's that?
I couldn't think of a way to describe it, but the same game of tag, or let's just catching, could be hunters and rabbits.
Yes.
Could be pirates and smugglers.
Yes.
Could be Romans and slaves.
Love it, yeah.
Could be all these things.
A bit like folktale variations.
Yes. There's something about the fact that you and
they all have a basis in an original idea.
yes, and you can. There's one way you could take it, which is that you can take it to whatever children are interested in terms of it. It could be. I was going to do, what is it? Transformers and Decepticons.
Yes.
It could be Team Rocket and Ash Ketchum and who can get there. But
that is why, sorry to interrupt you, but I've just had a light bulb moment about why the Smugglers game, why they got so completely intensely into it, and it was the in-roll element, I think. So that's my kind of like...
So this is where... So you can take it down the fantasy route of if there's a particular brand property that children are interested in, that's what they can empathise with. But in terms of relating back through human history, smugglers, Romans, pirates, all these things are real things people lived with who needed to find shelter, who needed to get away from authority, who needed to escape capture. Like that is, you know, you and I were talking the other day about like inherited trauma and the stuff that happens in history.
Yes.
We still sort of carry it.
Yeah.
And all the learners that you're going to meet come from a history of some point someone had to run. You know, whether that's, you know, even like landed aristocracy, at some point that family history was that they had to run. And so that is in us. And if you want to really deeply empathise and embed some learning about history or a group and I'm not saying you need to make it all worthy of like, let's be Syrian refugees and you be the guards at Calais, right? What I mean is like, there's just something in our bones.
Yeah, well, they do say that, you know, tag is like the old, or tiggy or whatever you call it, depending on what area of the country you live in.
Oh, I learned the other day that tag is touch and go. That's why it's called tag. Touch and go. Because there's one person and you touch and go. That's what I heard.
I
anyway.
think that's someone inventing that afterwards.
A backronym.
Yeah, a backronym. Because it isn't tag everywhere. It's tiggy or who or it or So it was it, I think, when I was a kid. Who wants to play it?
Yeah, it was it.
Yeah, who's it?
Anyway.
That's like universally played everywhere, ancient game, you know. But that thing about being in role, definitely I've really, like, partly I'm fascinated by that. That's what my master's was about, was like, how does learning change when you put a group of learners in role? You go, okay, we're going to do this thing, but you're all doing it imagining you are someone else. Yeah. And how that kind of, it's actually magical. Like I get goosebumps even talking about it because, so I interviewed loads of students afterwards after they'd done some writing, and they went into flow, basically described being in this flow state and kind of at the end of their time of writing, looked at what they'd written and went, whoa, like I have no recollection of writing that. Look how much I've written. Oh my God, look at the words I've used. Where the hell has that come from? And about kind of like being in role, giving you a kind of permission to behave other than yourself. So, you know what I was saying about like, if the team is against us and they're all going and strategizing, and then one person who doesn't normally speak out suddenly speaks out and becomes a leader and all that kind of thing. Whether that being in role enables that kind of like, well, I'm not me anymore. I am now a smuggler, and it's really high stakes, and so I now have permission, or I have a cloak to hide under, or I have a different hat on today.
Yeah.
So I'm able to do this, and my learning is stretched in this way because of that.
And it changes your social empathy levels, because if you are genuinely in role as a smuggler, you care not one bit the feelings of the border patrol.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
If it's a game of like, can you get the rocks to the thing, then you would go like, that's Dave. I know Dave. I sit next to Dave when I have lunch. He's whatever. But not only changing your own role, but changing the role of your peers changes how you relate to your peers, I think.
Yeah.
You've given
Which
me
is
a
why
very...
it's kind of safer for us for it to be them versus us, I think, because we can handle that most of the time, except that time when last time when I was dressed up as the monster in the ghillie suit. The last time we did a kind of Minecrafty type game, and I think that was the last time we played a Minecrafty type game.
It's very difficult.
They actually assaulted me, you know, and it was like the in-roll element was so strong that they actually needed to kill me. And these were kids that I knew really well, really well.
And they know
Some of
it's
them live
you.
in my house. And they were like basically trying to kill, like actually trying to
But
kill
they
me.
always know, cognitively,
Yeah.
they always know that it is me or you in that ghillie suit.
Yeah.
But something about the role changes it,
Yeah.
and they would never do those things if you and I just went like, we're the pirates, we're coming to take your treasure.
So elements of costume as
It's
well.
something about
another
costume,
level.
and I think face.
Yeah.
I think hiding your, which is masks, camouflage, all these things massively change.
But that whole element of like, if you were going to design, like develop a new game, that element of setting an imaginary scenario on top of it or roles is, I think, the key to
That
it.
is
So
one of the
like,
key elements
you
of a
know,
wide game.
Raiders, like the game of Raiders. So a lot of these games, by the way, I should just plug Tracy McIver's book because, well, she's got 3 books, but
She's got 84 books.
2 books of you know, Forest School-y stuff, and a lot of the games, you know,
Spawn
from there. And so I think Raiders is from her book. And so the thing is, you are squirrels, and I've developed it like squirrels and jays, or that might be in her original book, I can't quite remember. But animals that hide acorns and nuts, and the acorns and nuts are the stones. And half the team go and hide them. The one team goes to hide them, the other team watches them hiding. Cannot move, but sit there and watch. So you can kind of fake hide things if you need to.
Bend down, pretend you've put a stone down.
And then the other team have to go and find them.
Which is what real squirrels and jays and stuff do.
Exactly. But if you try to do that without the in-role element, like, I just don't think it would work as well. And there's something about, like, you know, the people...
The little movement of, like...
their shoulders up and scurrying, and, you know, even, like, grown-ups do it and get into role, and it kind of gives you permission to really engage in it in a cool way.
It gives you a buy-in that it's food, it's not just points.
Yes.
It's and so this kind of leads on then. So I think there's something about so if we're saying role is a key element of a good wide game, competitiveness is something that I go backwards and forwards on, because I'm not a massive fan of games that end with points or a group that are losers, or a group that has not won, you know, or a group that has even for some learners coming second out of a group of people. You know, if you go, oh, how many did you get? And they go, well, I got 5. Oh, I got 6. But having 5 is now devastating.
Yeah.
Which is why, so one of the things I like about Hunters and Rabbits is that at the end, it's because you catch someone, they become a hunter as well. You catch someone, they become a hunter as well. Everybody ends up on the winning team, and no one really seems to notice that or care that they weren't on that team to begin with. As soon as they get caught and they swap over, they're now completely invested in this new tribe. Okay, so how do we win? And then you go, 10 seconds ago, you were convinced that team wasn't going to win. which is, you know, one of the things it's like being socially flexible, I think, that we struggle with as adults. Lots of people just dig trenches and go more and more entrenched in, like, these are my views. Anyway, that's beside the point. I'm getting rather
Cognitive
political.
flexibility.
Cognitive flexibility.
Yes.
So thinking about wide games that, like...
There are no losers. Can I just say, a lot of games that you will... so if you're, like, Googling Forest School wide games or wide games in general or scouting games, so many of them are like, and when you're tagged, you're out of the game. Or if you drop the ball, you're
sit
out
to
of
the
the
side
game.
of the hall.
Like, that for me is an absolute no. That is a, like, line in the sand. So talking about, like, games that are challenging are still good to play because, you know, blah. Challenging, could end in tears, but go for it anyway. Games that involve somebody, therefore, not being allowed to play.
That's social exclusion.
I just think they can get in the bin.
Yeah.
That's so useless. I don't understand. Like, all that does is reinforce probably...
A hierarchy
that probably is already there beforehand.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that kind of being picked last for teams on sports day. It's just sort of like, oh, well,
And most of those games
you're shit.
don't involve a particular, like, strategy. They just involve physical prowess, speed, strength, whatever it is. Which, look, again, if we're going to talk about evolution, historically those things would have been very valuable. And to some extent are very valuable today. But there's something about the fact that if you're like the tagging team and you know whoever you tagged has to sit down, I'm yet to meet a group of children where, that hierarchy isn't already in their head.
Exactly.
And they know, I'm going to go for that kid because he's the slow one.
Completely.
Or
Or they're the person with not great hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
You know, it's just shit.
And then it becomes really obvious with those games, if you try and adapt those games to be like SEN friendly or anything else where you go, okay, then you get this weird hierarchy, like you get a group hierarchy where you go, you guys have got 2 lives because you're a bit shit.
Well, yeah.
And this team, they've only got 1 life or whatever, you know, in trying to balance the scales, you are actually reinforcing,
highlighting
these
disability
guys
or whatever.
need more of a go
Yeah.
than you. And I'm not saying that's bad for every learner. Sometimes they need that, or sometimes...
Well, sometimes the group will develop those kind of things themselves, won't they? So
But that's
like
the difference. That's where I think
Okay,
if it's self-directed, then that is somebody being empathetic and saying, so let's imagine for a second that you were not the fastest runner. If the teacher says, Gemma gets 2 lives, I, as the catcher, am now getting a bit of resentment of like, oh, you've just made my job harder. But if I come to you and go, can Gemma have 2 lives? What that's saying is I think she needs to play for longer, valuing her input. So I think if it comes from the group and is agreed by the group, that is inclusion.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if it comes top down, then it's differentiation. Do you know what I mean? I kind of waffled there.
No, I do know what you mean, and that's a really interesting and probably another whole topic about differentiation, isn't it? You could talk for hours about that.
Yeah. I wrote down loose parts as a key component, I think, to wide games. That could be loose parts like bits of fabric. And what I would say is really important about what I think makes good loose parts wide games is like resources that you don't have to be precious about.
Yep.
So if our bits of fabric are random bits of fabric that I cut into like 1.5 foot long pieces, they're tartan so that we can see them easily. I don't care if they get caught in a holly bush and we don't find it for a week. It's not the end of the world. If I was going, this is the tag rugby kit bag.
Yeah.
It's been brought to us by the Exeter Chiefs. We must not step on it, scrunch it, do it. Or the Smuggler's Rocks. Guys, you didn't drop any of the rocks, did you?
Yeah.
Because
They cost a lot of money.
those-
Sorry. You can edit that out if you want.
I'm absolutely editing that
Edit that out. But beep it. Just beep it.
Yeah. Completely derailed what I was saying.
Loose parts. What makes a good loose part?
Good loose part is something that you can lose and not care about. Or something that you don't really mind. Do you know what I was going to say? You don't really mind if somebody puts down their pants as part of the game, but I do kind of mind that.
But pants.
But you do know what I mean? Something you don't have to be super precious about, because then it takes a level of concern out of the game that they're not going, whoa, don't catch me like that. Don't, if it's something like you're throwing towards targets, that you have to go, whoa, let's not throw it that way. Let's go, to be able to have the kids to experiment with the strategy, they need some flexibility and resources.
I did have to intervene this week, though, when other people's clothes were viewed in that same way as like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's a loose part. It's like, who gave you these clothes? Who provided you with these clothes? Do you think maybe it'd be quite respectful to them to just not shred them in the name of a game? How about that as an idea? Yeah.
Are these people that live with you?
No. Oh. Actually not. They weren't.
But yeah, I know what you mean. So, but that's where you can go, that's not an appropriate resource. Can I find you some fabric?
Yeah.
Can I find you a tarp that will meet that need and you don't have to be precious about it?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff about Forest School, I think, is great when we don't have to be precious about things.
Yeah.
I think there's a real
definitely
benefit. And also one of the things that when adults come for toddler groups or family sessions or whatever, is a thing that is the most, not challenging, but that I almost find with each family or adult, I have to at least once go, that's all right if I break that. That's fine. That's a stick. It doesn't matter. Well, I can't take that stick home. I can't actually play. They literally grow on trees.
Except when that kind of
you
idea...
are the except today.
I am, sorry. I am. But that's what makes a great podcast. If I just went, yeah.
I'd be much happier if you
would
just
you?
agreed. No,
okay.
I wouldn't.
Yes, Lewis. Yes, and. Okay, yes, and.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, and when that idea and philosophy becomes so embedded in them that then you get the pens out and then they're like, fuck the pens. Just gonna not put the lids on and chuck them on the floor. And I'm like, how about no? How about we put the lids back on the pens? No, it's fine. Have you finished?
It would just be annoying, wouldn't it, if you labelled all the pens that you have in your pocket, and then when you lent them to the person you work with, she regularly see.
I don't chuck them on the floor.
No, but I regularly see you produce pens from your pockets with my stickers on that I knew.
But where are the pens with my stickers?
That's not my fault. I gave you as many as I had.
But where are they?
I put green stickers on all of them.
But
and
where are they now? As we talked about before, some of us wash our trousers where the pens live in the pocket. So that's what happens.
Are you accusing me of not washing now?
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
I told you, I just decant everything. I have a little wicker basket next to my washing machine.
Yeah.
And I decant every pocket.
But what about all the other things that are on the surface next to your washing machine? Like the bin, the Hoover compartment thing, the microwave. How is there room for the wicker basket? All the other things, all the other piles of shit next to your washing machine. What do you do with those to get room for the wicker basket for the pens? This is my house. Yeah. Have you? Is that enough about loose parts, or was there something else you wanted to add?
No, I just kind of wanted to throw it in as I do think it's a good component.
Yes.
And we were starting to talk before we got derailed by coffee about bringing loads of resources into schools like ropes and tabards and very in my head as I'm describing it, I'm seeing very professional, lots of PVC, lots of single-use equipment. Tag rugby belts, something, tabards that have the netball positions on them.
Yeah.
Things like that are loose parts, but they aren't. And then very narrow, and often, even if the children want to adapt them into the game, something about their scarcity or their value means that they can't be.
Yeah, and you're right. Like bits of fabric or ribbon are so multi-use, aren't they? That then kids can invent games that involve those as well, and just ask you for them, and you have no issue with going, here you go, take them all. Yeah, because they can be kind of
blindfolds
or things on trees that you have to find. You played a good game the other day where that was that treasure hunt thing where they had a bit of ribbon.
I tied different coloured bits of paracord on things around the woods, just 6 inches loops of paracord. But we've got so much paracord of stripy pink and green or camouflage or red or black, because we use it a bit like carbon dating. So if I see something that's made, I'll go, that was when we had orange paracord. That was early 2008. That must be. It goes through a rotation. And then they had to go around and find the thing, not take it, because that was another bit that made it not competitive.
Yeah.
Was that I said, don't take the paracord off, just write the colour down and come back and I'll tell you if it's the right colour. Because what I didn't want was one group physically dominating it by going, we are the fastest, we'll take the ribbon away.
Yes.
It meant that when the first group finished, and I was really clear about this and repeated it quite loudly, one group finished and they were going, we won, and I went, well, yeah, but when the next group get to the last one, they'll win too, and when the next group find all of them, they'll win as well. You know, it was like trying to encourage that intrinsic competition, an internal kind of like, did you beat the challenge?
Yes.
Did you better yourself from yesterday?
Yeah.
And that's where you and I being one team works really well, because the rest of the group can keep getting better, and it's not us going, I mean, we might quietly go, sometimes I chase them and I go, gee, you guys are too fast.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 30 this week, and I have started to sometimes go, jeez, guys, you were a lot slower when you were, especially some of them that come for 2 years, and you get like, some of them are coming for 4 years, and I can remember them coming and it being like a gentle jog to catch that person.
Yeah.
Being like, I don't even need to put any effort in. Now, some of them,
Yeah.
I am like, I cannot catch that person. They are genuinely too fast.
Yeah.
Or like, some of them that have been coming, some of them now are bigger than me.
Yeah.
Physically, but I'm 6 foot. I'm about 200 pounds, which is roughly 100 kilos for those interested. And there are kids that come here that are bigger than me, 14-year-olds bigger than me.
Yeah.
And you just go, okay,
Yeah.
I've got to just take that.
Yeah.
But so then one of the things that I wrote down was age range
Yep.
and mixed age.
Yep.
So we have both done this work in schools and both been teachers, and that is generally single year group, maybe 2 year groups. The physical range of abilities or academic, in terms of cognition or physicality,
Yep.
is a spectrum in this kind of in a range. Home ed groups or family festival type groups, you go, there's a 3-year-old
Yep.
playing this game, and there is a 15-year-old playing this game.
Or maybe even including adults.
Or you include adults.
You know, there's a 60-year-old with mobility issues also playing this game.
And how that differs from what you might consider a wide game. And this sort of goes back to that adaptability thing of lots of people, you know, it's like here's the wide game, here's the age range for it, and here are the rules. And the rules kind of relate back to the age range. I think they're very closely tied of like, 7-year-olds can handle this level of complexity and this level of physicality in general. But when you space that out and go, right, we're going to go, you know, we played that smugglers game.
But do you know what? I kind of think, sorry to interject, but I think that's the problem with the preconception of most 7-year-olds can handle this. I think that's a problem. I think that generalisation that happens when you do only work with one age group, or groups are defined by age, makes you have an expectation that is unrealistic completely. And I think that's why I was really shit at differentiation when I was a secondary school teacher, because you just have it's also enforced on you from on high, isn't it? Because you've got
that's your
these
framework.
Children should attain X by the end of the year. It's so narrow and it's so prescribed, and you have that expectation already that you kind of go in thinking, well, everyone can handle this because of course you can, because you're 11, blah, blah, blah. But actually, if you're working with a mixed age group, I think age kind of disappears for everybody, you and the other children, in a really great way. Sometimes it's quite clear because it is about like physical ability or strength or speed or whatever, and so it's quite clear that if you're younger, that's going to be more challenging for you. But everything else is so flexible. You know, a 14-year-old, like a 5-year-old may well be able to grasp and deal with like some kind of rule in the game way better than a 14-year-old.
Well, I think that speaks to it, doesn't it? So when you and I ping back and forth ideas about how will we play this game, how will we...
That's coffee, sorry, not we. Go on.
Good clarification. You've
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
pissed yourself.
Yeah. So when we ping back and forth.
When we ping back and forth, although we have, say, in our home ed group, a kind of a bunching, let's say, of 5 and 6 year olds,
Yep.
and we then have a bit of a gap
Yep.
and a bunching of 10, 11 year olds, and then we've got some outliers that are a bit older than that. But I don't think you and I ever say the 6-year-olds
No.
won't be able to do that.
No,
or
never.
The 10-year-olds will find that
And
boring.
I love that. And
We
I love that I
go,
don't think in terms of
this
that anymore.
person,
Yeah,
or
completely.
X, Y, and Z, who all have similar needs,
Yeah.
but across a massive age range, they're going to
Completely.
find that tricky.
And it's way more realistic. It's that's the holistic element of it, isn't it? And so you're thinking about the learners as opposed to age-related expectations. There you go. So that is a phrase that I now think that can get in the bin.
Age-related
Yeah.
expectations.
So that is what we, EYFS. That's all of that. Child development thing. I mean, it's just a load of bollocks, isn't it? It's one of those constructs that's just completely arbitrary, and we will just accept it and go, oh yeah, okay. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Someone will probably disagree with me and go, no, it's really useful. And it probably is useful in some ways. But in the
It fits
context
in the
of
frameworks,
games, in
doesn't it?
context of games and learning, then I think it's kind of
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
entirely helpful. I wanted to talk about those moments where you have a game that everybody knows quite well, and it relies on you as the grown-up having some role that it's easier for you to do. So, for example, the up the hill game, we call it, where one person's at the top of the hill, and
It's like Grandma's Footsteps.
it's like Grandmother's Footsteps or Sniper, I've heard it called. So one person's at the end of the area, up top
The
of the hill,
playing
end
course.
of the field, whatever. And they turn their back and everyone's in a starting position, and you count down very loudly from a certain number, and you can change that number. So sometimes it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sometimes it's shorter time. And the other players have to get towards you, but then once you
When you turn around,
when
they
you
have to
turn
do
around,
something. Either lie on the ground,
Or hide.
or
Yeah.
stand still. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just do it with the statues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it as a game. And so we play they hide, and because you're at the top of the hill, it's really lovely. They get
scramble.
so many great hiding places and different routes up and stuff, and they have to kind of tap you on the shoulder or get past a certain point. And again, there's no necessarily winners or losers. It's just can
Yeah,
you
when you
do
get
it?
to the end, you've won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you'll always get that child that will go, can I be the counter? I want to be the counter. Or can I be the person who has the very essential role to make the entire game
When we
work?
play Hunters and Rabbits and we look round and we go, so it's just one rabbit, is it? And
Yeah.
all 9 of you want to be
Yeah.
hunters straight
Yeah.
away, do you?
Yeah. And thinking specifically about things that really do require a higher level of self-regulation or some kind of ability that you as an adult might have that they
Loud
don't
voice.
necessarily have.
Because you're
Yeah.
facing the wrong way in
Yeah.
in that
Exactly, a
uphill
loud
game.
voice or the ability to stand still while you are looking for people, because the game doesn't work if you stroll around looking
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
trees, or the ability, the understanding to count backwards, or
Or even some social flexibility
Yes,
to go,
I was gonna say the same
I can
thing.
see so-and-so's shoulder,
yeah,
but they don't need me to call them out today.
I've already called them out twice. I'm going to give
They're
them
not
a
gonna
bit of
take the
relief.
third- yeah.
Completely. So, what about
and then you
those
want a
moments?
child who wants to take that role.
Yeah, so a child takes that role, and you go, okay, well, that's really interesting that they feel able to ask for that and that they want to do that. But and you go, yeah, sure, and they do it, and the whole flipping thing just falls apart, and it's
Yeah.
not great learning necessarily for anybody, or is it? I don't know. Discuss.
I think it depends. I was like a directive. Discuss.
Discuss.
Okay. I think it depends if you have, a bit like we were saying about smugglers, if you have time to reflect on it at the end. So one of the things that I think we struggle about is that quite often we'll play that game at the end of a day.
Yeah.
And one of the difficulties playing a wide game at the end of the day is people are getting pulled out as
Yep.
their parents come to pick them up. It's a nicer way, because our parents can pick up from the gate, which is right on our site. We don't have, like some people do, pack everything up, walk back, then we're back at school, or then we're back. Ours, we do a reflection, then we'll go over and play a wide game or something,
Yeah.
and they sort of fizzle out. And so what doing it at that time of the day means is that you don't get that chance to reflect at the end of how did we feel about it. It just slowly falls apart. I think if you had someone at the top who couldn't count backwards or their voice wasn't loud enough. And we did that at a time of day, like with the rabbits, hunters and rabbits.
Yeah.
We've sometimes reflected back at the end and gone, was that particularly fun game? And they go, well, no, because there were so many of you and I didn't want to get
Yeah.
caught. Or, well, no, because you were all in role and you were a bit too, reflecting back on it.
Yeah.
And can then be constructive, not criticism, but like constructive feedback to go, your voice wasn't very loud.
Yeah.
And they then have a choice to go either. So sometimes what we'll do is a kid stands next to us and they pick the numbers.
Yes.
So we are the mouthpiece.
Yes.
And we go, what number is it now? And they go, 7. And we go, okay,
Yeah.
7, 6, 5,
Yeah.
4. And you just go, I am just
Yeah.
using a physical ability here. I'm basically a
Yes.
megaphone.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it. But I think it is interesting. I think reflection after a wide game
Yeah.
would be a really good thing to implement for a lot of groups. But it can be challenging because lots of times the wide game is the equivalent of like a wake and shake. It's the
Yes.
thing that you then sparks into some other play.
Yeah, definitely.
And if it's sparked into other play, do you stop the other play and bring them back and go, I know you've now developed this game and you want to take it over to the treehouse and make a new base. But come back and let's all stop and statically reflect and do what, you
Yeah.
know. Maybe it needs some like little group reflections as they break off. Hi guys. I know we're not playing it anymore, but
Yeah.
how was Hunters and Rabbits? Is there anything you want to do differently next time?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, break off, do those things. You know, reflection is super important in forest school.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think people might see the wide game as something that we're borrowing from scouting or
Yeah.
borrowing from, and so it doesn't need
Yeah.
reflection.
Yeah, or it's not necessarily like a learning experience. It's just to like burn off some energy.
Yeah.
You know, and actually there's so much learning there.
Anything that starts with the phrase "it's just"
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Completely.
not a great thing.
Yeah.
So doing it at the end of the day leads me to, I think this is the last note that I have, which is time. And wide games and time can be a massive thing. They can be, we want to just play this bulldog game.
Oh, do you remember we
for
played
40
Capture the Flag?
Yeah.
We had like a really small home ed group for a while, didn't we? And it was like January and it was really cold and there were no leaves on the trees and we just ended up one day playing Capture the Flag pretty much all day. It was
Yeah.
fascinating. Sorry, carry on.
Well, no, that's just what I was going to say is like some wide games finish with an outcome. Some wide games, so we have played it was basically a forest school version of Cups and Cones,
Oh, yeah.
Stars and Moons. We
yeah.
painted rocks that had stars on one side, moons on the other, and there were 10 big rocks. One group wanted them all to be stones, moon. One of them wanted all to be sun. We're
Yeah.
racing around trying to flip each other and do whatever. And that was done by time. That game only lasted, 3 minutes or
Yeah,
something?
yeah,
Because otherwise it's just infinite.
Yeah.
Some games.
Yeah.
And that can be really interesting to kind of just give people a game that is endless,
Yeah.
like Stuck in the Mud.
Yeah.
The ability to free your teammates. Or we played Fairy Ring because you told them the story
I forgot about that
of,
game.
I think it wasn't Cake Cracker Nuts, but you told them a story about the fairy ring.
It's called The Tale of a Tale, and it's in a book called The Cat King's Daughter, which is a collection of like British folk tales.
So then we ended up playing, there was a fairy ring.
Yeah.
If they got tagged by, I think you were the fairy or I was
Yeah.
a fairy, they had to go in the ring. But the other children could like save them and get them
Yes.
back out the ring. And so there's no end to that game.
Yeah.
Because the only end is that you tag everyone.
Yes.
Which we would never do.
Yeah.
Because again,
Because they're too fast.
because they're too fast. But also we've got that
Yeah.
self-awareness to go, I need to. And that game was really nice. I'm just reflecting on this game now. What was really nice about that game was you and I were in complete control over who got tagged.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would intentionally tag all the, I'm going to say dominant children, which meant that they were relying on someone they might not have necessarily played with.
Yeah. to save them.
And be the hero in that game. And so you can kind of manipulate that game and go, bum, 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 bum. Okay, now you've got to wait for that person to come and get you out. And you can do all the theatrics of like trying to tag them and falling over and he's going to get past me. And then something about, for that child, hearing the rest of the group chant their name and we need you, come and save us, we need that feeling of importance was really
lovely,
amazing. But so I was thinking about time and wide games, and they're really hard to time. If either they're a timed one like flipping over the stones, or time in and out of the fairy ring, and then you go, this has a concrete end, or you have a game where you go, I reckon it'll be 5 minutes, but it might be 25 minutes if so-and-so comes up with a great strategy, or it could be 1 minute because they all want to be hunters anyway, and so they've all just stood here and they just want to get tagged. And do you know what I mean? They are.
And sometimes you have an expectation that a game will take 20 minutes and actually it like fizzles out in 2 minutes and you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't the vibe of the group today. Or vice versa, you'll look at the time and go, holy mackerel, like we've missed snack time because this just went off, on a complete tangent somewhere.
And also then self-directed was, I realised I had one more thing, sorry. Self-directed, in that thing that you and I talk about, big invitation yesterday, Thursday even, I went, right, I reckon I can find all of you in under 2 minutes, even if you hide really well. And that was me trying to get them to play hide and seek.
Yeah.
2 of them went off and hid.
Yeah.
But 4 of them stayed here.
Yeah.
And then I went, shit. How do I are those 4 going to be happy here while I go and look for those 2 that have hidden?
Yeah.
Do I call those 2 back and go, not enough people wanted to play?
Yeah.
Do I try and get those 4 to be hunters with it, to be, seekers with me? That thing about a wide game being, like football, like we were saying about football, being dominant over a space, sometimes then gets into influencing like self-directed learning. If you go, we're going to play bulldog from here to here, but that's where the bush is, and actually someone really wanted to decorate the bush because it's
well, we had that in our
sailing
kindergarten space, didn't we, where we realised that a certain type of play need was kind of trampling, literally and metaphorically, over a different type of play need. So we had to zone some areas. Do you remember? Because we were like, okay, there's a real need for rough and tumble, fast running, big body movement play, but that was happening in an area which meant that people who were like building tiny things with sticks,
and
or
just making a little tower out of bricks and very lovely play and small
or like
world stuff,
playing in the mud kitchen, and it was just getting absolutely destroyed,
literally trampled.
And we had to zone it, didn't we, in order to...
We zoned it, and then we pathed
physically. We zoned it
so we
physically.
we did 2 things. First of all, we zoned it and said, this is where you can do the, where we're going to do rough and tumble plays. But then the other option that we came up with later was that we put paths everywhere. Yeah. And there were little islands of sort of...
They were like racetracks, weren't they?
Yeah. And then it was like, inside this island, you don't have to worry about getting trampled on.
Yeah.
It's only if you go, like basic road safety.
Yeah.
When you step onto the path, have a look, is anybody running? Anyway.
Yeah.
That was my thought about wide games.
Yes.
I think that we've mentioned 2 or 3 things that we could podcast about later, but without going too far off topic.
Yes. I would love to hear other listeners' experiences of wide games, either things games that you've invented, or observations that you've made that maybe we haven't talked about, or we have, and you've gone, yes, I've noticed that, or whatever. So I kind of feel like this might be a topic that could be discussed, amongst the community.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll put this in the Facebook group, and if you want to contribute,
share and talk.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.